Good morning. John Stettin, past the wire, in the studio, war room, office, all combined into one. Hope everybody is doing well and looking forward to a little bit over 2 weeks, the Belmont Stakes, and Justify going for the Triple Crown. And whenever that happens in the sport of kings, it generates a world of excitement, an electric atmosphere, and something to look forward to and watch for that's very special and very unique in the entire world of sports, not just the sport of kings. It's just, a remarkable achievement in every sense of the word. And if you have not gotten a chance, the Past the Wire column that I wrote for Amwager this week, which there's a link to it on my site, or you could find it on the Amwager site. I talk a little bit about the Triple Crown and how it's a true benchmark in sports. Talk a little bit about some of the past winners, some of the things that have changed. One of the things I find most fascinating is that, prior to Secretariat, you had horses run, Triple Crown winners run between the Derby and Preakness and between the Preakness and Belmont, which is something you would absolutely never see today. So it's just one of the many ways the game has changed and evolved, but yet the Triple Crown remains steadfast and a true benchmark of greatness in all of sports, not just thoroughbred horse racing. So if you get a chance, check out that column. I think you'll like it. And we talk about some of the tough beats as well. And there have been some, really good horses that stepped up to the plate that couldn't get it done. And, it takes a lot to get it done. A lot from the trainer, a lot from the rider, and most of all, a lot from the horse. And a little bit of racing luck always helps. And you need it in that series. All three of those races are tough to win. So that said, we're going to give a little state of affairs in the sport of kings. Other than the Triple Crown run being on the horizon, there's not a heck of a lot happening. One of the things that people are talking about is the lack of horses and lack of really strong cards leading up to the Belmont, especially in New York. But, we know this is Memorial Day weekend, used to be anchored by the Met Mile. The Met Mile's been moved to, Belmont Stakes Day, and part of that just overall supercard. And, racing is gravitating in that direction of the big, huge days, Derby Day, Oaks Day, Belmont Day, Travers Day. And, the cards before those big days suffer because of it. And it's not over when the big day comes, because after the Belmont Stakes, the cards will be a little bit light and suffering because a lot of people will be saving their horses for Saratoga, which is right around the corner. And, a lot of the races will be, held over for those condition books when they come out. And that's another part of the evolution of the game and how things are changing. Racetracks look to, make their money on those big days and capitalize on them. And as bettors, we've kind of got to evolve and go after those days a little bit harder than, the run-of-the-mill days. So, we adapt, we roll with the punches, and play the cards that we're dealt. That's just the way it is. I don't see it changing anytime in the immediate future anyway. Did I like it better the old day when every Saturday was a big day and a holiday, and Sunday wasn't far behind, and even the weekdays were crowded? Of course, I think we all did that. Those of us who were lucky enough to go through that era and that time. But things change, so we move forward. One of the reasons Ferraris have no rearview mirrors, what's behind us doesn't matter. They do have rearview mirrors. That's just something that we say now and then. But in other news, Bolt de Oro, one of the horses on a lot of people's radar for the Kentucky Derby, is being pointed to the Met Mile. Interesting choice of spots, in my opinion. He doesn't really look like a miler / horse that has the kind of speed to really be, a top competitor in the Met Mile. Of course, anything can happen, but if you look at the history of the Met and the kind of horses that win it, it's usually an elongated sprint and speed, and I mean really fast speed, has a tendency to hold up and perform very well. And I don't know that he has that kind of speed, or that's really the best spot for that colt. But you know, that's what they're going for. So he'll make an interesting 3-year-old edition. And, you know, if he does win it, he won't be the first 3-year-old. One that comes right to mind. And, you know, I'll mention briefly because I'll be talking a little bit about this streak coming up, and that's Woody's 5 Belmont Stakes in a row, which is something that we'll never see repeated, and is one of the greatest streaks in all of sports. And, you know, absolutely in the sport of kings. But Woody Stevens, you may or may not know, won the Met Mile when it was run on Memorial Day on a Monday with a horse named Conquistador Cielo against older horses. Came back 5 days later against 3-year-olds and won the Belmont Stakes. A mile against older on Monday, a mile and a half against 3-year-olds 5 days later on Saturday. That was quite the training accomplishment, and you know, Woody was a hay, oats, and water guy all the way. Lasix wasn't even used back then in New York, so you could just, you know, put in perspective what kind of training feat that truly was, and that was part of his run of 5 Belmonts. Not a lot of other news going on in the sport of kings right now, you know, minor stuff. I think the media coverage of the Triple Crown is a little bit weak. You know, I went on Twitter this morning and I saw 9 posts from big media people saying Justified Gallops this morning looked great, or something thereabout. They all 9 said practically the same thing. All showed Justified galloping for the first time. I think he went a mile and a half since the Preakness. Nothing to see here. Nothing that is all that revealing. If I was on scene, which I have no intention of being, and I'm glad I'm not, but if I was out there covering this, I would take a different approach. What I would do is I would find some under-the-radar horse pointing for the Belmont that's also galloping, looking really good, and do a little bit of video and profile on him saying, listen, this one is flying in under the radar. I'm the only guy from the media here, and this horse looks pretty good galloping this morning too. And just kind of, you know, broaden the coverage a little bit, you know, get a little diversified, and, you know, show fans and bettors and, you know, people following the series a couple of different angles and a couple of different approaches. Field is starting to take shape. We have a good idea of at least a couple of the horses, and it's going to be an interesting run for sure. You know, I don't like to handicap in advance, but I think that the key to beating Justify in the Belmont Stakes will probably be how much pressure he gets early or at different portions of the race, and how much Mike is able to get him to relax. And that's relax even if he's on the lead going pretty fast, because if he's on the lead going fast by himself, Mike will probably get him to relax and keep him in the right part of the track to, you know, make sure he's in rhythm and got, you know, got his legs and wind within himself. And, you know, under those circumstances, it's going to be a challenge to beat him. But if he takes a lot of pressure and has to, you know, really dig in a couple of times, you know, during the course of the running, then that mile and a half can be a tricky distance to get, especially for horses, you know, who've never been that far before. Another thing to consider is, you know, they don't run a mile and a half at Belmont a lot on the dirt like they used to years ago. So a lot of riders aren't as familiar with that configuration and that race distance over that track as they used to be. And the riders that are familiar with it and have ridden that distance over that track absolutely have a little bit of an edge. And Mike Smith certainly falls into that category. And that's really it. There's just not a lot to report. A lot of conversation and buzz followed the broadcast I did talking about the common ownership in thoroughbreds and how it's, you know, most likely going to keep Audible out of the Belmont Stakes, which everybody's talking about. Also going to probably keep Axeman from even consideration for the Belmont Stakes, being trained by Bob Baffert, and, you know, a lot of people aren't talking about that horse, but, you know, people are recognizing that it does impact the game. It does create a little bit of a conflict, and you know, it's certainly not in the interest of sportsmanship. So it was nice, you know, following that broadcast to see a lot a lot of people talking about it and you know, discussing it, and a lot of people realizing that it is an issue within the game, and you know, hopefully they'll figure out an answer. And you know, nothing against partnerships. Partnerships can be a great way, especially, you know, good, well-run partnerships, to bring new people into the game. Not against them at all, but you know, I'm against, you know, no couplings of entries involving common ownership, and I don't want to say against, but I don't think that it's good for the game that, you know, so many people, you know, buy into so many different horses and have pieces of all these different horses that, you know, race or don't race against each other, and that, you know, politicizes the game a little bit, and just, you know, creates at least an appearance of, you know, some collusion, and just takes away from the sportsmanship. But we'll be back with a lot more broadcasts coming up, a lot of coverage of the Triple Crown and the Belmont. I'm looking forward to doing my, you know, full analysis of the Belmont and providing that. And, you know, for the Track and Trip members out there, we will be doing, you know, a lot of analysis on a lot of the other races as well. And we'll have a lot of races to address that day. And there should be some opportunities for some pretty big swings. So that's really the state of affairs in the sport of kings right now. And hope everybody has a great day. John Stettin, Past the Wire. This is where you get my opinion and my thoughts. And this is our studio, war room, office, all rolled into one. And we'll be watching the races today, trying to spot horses for the Track and Trips list. And you know, maybe even take a swing or two during the, you know, along the way. So have a great day, everybody, and ciao for now.